So, as of recording this video, a couple hours ago, the Iraqi parliament voted to expel all American soldiers from Iraq. Whether or not this is actually going to go anywhere, I think this is largely symbolic. From what I was able to find, the Americans are there at the request of the Iraqi prime minister. And I don't think there's like a full prime minister at the moment. They have like an acting prime minister because there's a number of political crises happening. So I don't think the parliament actually has the authority to expel American troops, but it's a really bad sign for how rapidly this situation is deteriorating. So this all comes back to the death of Qasim Soleimani, if I'm pronouncing it properly, the top Iranian general who was killed by the U.S. A couple days ago, as of recording this video. And I hadn't really realized just how important he was. He's being described in some of the news reports I've been reading as the number two guy in Iran and as the architect of Iran's foreign policy, in particular, its foreign policy towards the Middle East. So he was really high up, and we're having like mass demonstrations. There's immense public mourning. I've read people say there hasn't been this level of public mourning for someone since Ayatollah Khamenei died. And the whole thing is just kind of rapidly escalating. I haven't seen it escalate this fast. Is it going to lead to war? I don't know. But there's 2 points I wanted to make about this. The first one is and this was a discussion. You know how I have my friend Sir Kirpon here. I was talking to him about this. So his belief is there's a coup that's going to happen relatively soon in Iraq. That the last election or so in which a bizarro political coalition emerged and the Shias kind of lost some of their political dominance has really destabilized the country. Who knows, the past election may have been partially rigged by the US. We really have no idea like what's even going on at this point. But that given that the Shias have increased so much in terms of their population share, and their position has been very much bolstered by the fact that they incorporated the Shia militias into basically the national army, and they now vastly outnumber any Sunni or Kurdish units. This seeming loss of political power, combined with them being in a much better military position, may have made the conditions right for some sort of coup. And installing a theocratic or at least a very much more pro-Iran government. Also, there's the issue of ISIS basically being defeated at this point in time. So there isn't really that much of an onus to have US aid. There's that. There's also Trump, at least theoretically, starting to withdraw from the Middle East. So I think that's a very real possibility. The exact mechanics of it, whether there's a snap election, whether parliament gets suspended, whether we go to a full-blown military dictatorship, I don't really know what's going to happen. But I think it's a distinct possibility that you might see a coup of some description in Iraq, even if it's a soft coup. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is Trump and his role in the airstrike. I think it's a distinct possibility. I don't mean to play conspiracy nut here, but that Trump didn't actually order the strike. That someone in the U.S. military or U.S. State Department or someone ordered the strike without his approval or told him about it after the fact or mentioned it to him, but he hadn't made up his mind and they just went ahead and did it anyways. I think that's a very real possibility. As we've been seeing with the number of people Trump's fired over the last couple of years and the number of people who have like left and then tried to undermine him, he has a massive problem with not just the bureaucracy, but his own political appointments turning on him and just pursuing their own interests as opposed to what would kind of serve his political health and his odds for re-election. So I think that's very capable. That's very likely that he might not have had full knowledge of this, if any knowledge of this. And then the question is, why would he go out and claim that he was behind it if he wasn't actually behind it? Because impressions are everything in international power politics. And if I can make a Game of Thrones reference, when Catelyn kidnapped Tyrion, which was a disaster kind of like this that led to the War of Five Kings. Ned opted, instead of saying, look, my wife is crazy, I can't control her, she did this on her own, I didn't know about it, to say, oh, she took Tyrion under my orders. Because it looked less bad for him to make an irrational political decision than to admit that his wife was just going off and he couldn't control her and he couldn't control his own household. That would make him look extremely weak and vulnerable, and he would lose kind of all prestige. It was better to kind of be arbitrary and reckless than to appear completely declawed and ballless. So, like, if Trump was to go out and say, look, I have no control over my own administration, you have these people in it who are, like, ordering airstrikes and, like, crazy stuff like that. I can't control it. There's absolutely nothing I can do about it. That's really, really scary. That's in a lot of ways worse. That would cause, like, widespread panic. So I can see why he would take responsibility for it. So then the question is, who was behind it and what was their motivation, if we're going to accept. So, of course, there's like the more grand conspiracy theory that they wanted to start a war with Iran. So there's a couple theories to this. You could say just neocons with spreading democracy. They view Iran as America's natural enemy, and they just want to start a war with Iran because they think that they can win the war with Iran. Either because they're willing to sacrifice immense numbers of young men and women to invade Iran, or they just think they can bomb it back to the Stone Age and like they did with Iraq. So that's a possibility. The other obvious one is it was Israel sympathizers. Iran's long been Israel's arch nemesis, and there is a lot of extreme Zionists within the American government, particularly now that a Republican's in power. And they may have wanted to start a U.S. war with Iran so that the U.S. can destroy Iran, and that'll help Israel in some way. So that's the grand conspiracy. If it is a conspiracy, like, so I don't even know if this is a conspiracy. It's just somebody acting on their own and possibly on their own, and Trump not knowing about it. So if it's not a grand thing, what may have happened is a war hawk or a military person with no political acumen might have just said, look, there's this guy, he's been on our target list, we have an opportunity, let's just take the shot. And rather than being part of any like grand strategy to start a war, it was just somebody making a tactical decision that had really bad political fallout. So honestly, if I was to like put my money on something, I'd say probably what happened is some neocon or some professional military guy who doesn't get politics ordered the strike and either didn't tell Trump they were going to do it or suggested it to him but didn't get his approval, or were vague about it and said, oh, there's some Iranian target, you don't have to worry about it. At the moment, at least, that seems the most likely possibility, but who really knows? This whole thing is spiraling out of control really fast, and none of us really have any idea what's going on. So those are just some extra thoughts on the matter. I'll try to keep covering this story as people really seem to like my last video on it. Anyways, God bless. Hopefully we won't all be going to war with Iran.